Hey, greetings chemistry department. Today we're going to look at colligative properties, and we're going to use colligative properties to actually make a nice treat by the end of this lab. So to start us out today, as we start looking at colligative properties are going to be physical properties of a solution that are changed by dissolving the amount of particles in it. So we're going to focus in on those particles being dissolved in there. So to start us out, two ideas. The boiling point elevation. Boiling point elevation, what it looks at is we're going to increase the boiling point of the substance. So if you put salt in water, you'd actually increase the boiling during cooking. Or freezing point depression is the idea by adding salt to water or ice, it actually lowers the freezing point. We salt sidewalks in the wintertime, salts in parentheses or in quotation marks there, because as we're working, what we're going to see is that salt allows that freezing point to be lowered, and as it's lowered, it allows ice to melt in the wintertime on those sidewalks. Now, ionic compounds are more effective when they're dissolved because more particles are produced. So an example is like NaCl is going to break down to a positive and negative ion or have two particles. Calcium chloride, sidewalk salt, is actually going to dissolve into a calcium positive 2 ion and 2 chlorine ions, so we actually get 3 particles from it. Whereas if we take like sucrose or sugar, C6H12O6, when it's dissolved, it actually just stays as that one particle. It doesn't break apart, so it doesn't have nearly an effect. So when we look at this, what I've got over on the side here is we have 2 glasses of ice. One glass of ice has a thermometer just of ice is at 1.4 degrees Celsius. Now the second glass of ice has ice and salt added into it, and that salt that's added into it has now lowered that freezing point now to negative 11.9 degrees Celsius. That's going to be our key thing in lab for today. So for our equipment in lab today, what we're going to need is 1 Ziploc gallon bag, 1 quart bag, a 1/4 cup of sugar, a 1/2 cup of milk, a 1/2 cup of heavy cream or whipping cream, a 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla, a couple cups of ice, and 1.5 to 2/3 of a cup of rock salt. Rock salt is just kind of that heavier, coarse grained salt. That is going to help us out as we're going there. So as we're working, what we're going to look at is mixing all of those together today. So in our quart bag, we're going to take that 1/4 cup of sugar, half a cup of milk, half a cup of heavy cream, a little extra vanilla, and we're going to seal this bag closed. So that first step, I want to make sure that we're sealed closed. And we're going to put that bag into the larger gallon bag. Now inside that gallon bag, as we said, we're going to be putting our couple cups of ice in there. And we're going to be putting that 1/2 cup, 2/3 of a cup rock salt in there. I do have a little bit extra ice, so I'll put a little extra ice in there too. Why not? And then our step is going to be to seal up, get that air out of there as much as we can. Make sure that we're sealed. Now you got to be careful with this next step. It gets cold. We're going to be taking and mixing that rock salt and the salt, and it's going to take about 10 minutes or so for us to mix. All right, so we've been stirring, shaking, spinning around. Remember, it gets really cold in there, so be passing this around to other friends, family members, lab mates, anybody else around as we're working here. But what we're going to do is that ice, if we remember, ice as it melts absorbs heat from around the room, around the surroundings. So when you touch ice, it feels colder. By adding heat, or by adding the salt to it, it lowers the freezing point of that ice and actually makes it colder, absorbing more energy from around the room. And so now we've got a nice thick consistency to that mixture that we made earlier. All I'm going to do is just cut a hole in the side of the bag here. And we're going to be able to take and squeeze out some soft serve ice cream. So what we've done is by adding that salt, it allowed that freezing point to change, lowering that freezing point. And as that freezing point lowered, we were able to make a nice treat of ice cream for today. So cheers to everyone. Science.